Oye, Mira, when we have the discussion of deconstructing white supremacy here in the United States, it's extremely important that we also have the conversation of how racism has impacted the entire world. For example, did you know that Brazil was the last Latin American country to end slavery in 1888? And the reason why they struggle with colorism and racism today is all due in part to the Confederate soldiers that migrated to Brazil right after the Civil War. True story. You're probably saying, why the fuck would Confederate soldiers move to Brazil after the Civil War? Great question. Meet Emperor Dom Pedro II of Brazil. See, Dom Pedro became Emperor of Brazil at the age of 5 when his father handed the throne down to him. Which means that by the age of 5, he was already born into a system that was using slavery to its maximum capacity. Like America, Brazil became extremely wealthy because of slavery. Not only did they have African slaves, but they also enslaved their indigenous populations. They enslaved the Guarani people and the Tupi. Brazil's slavery game was on point. The crazy shit about all of this is that Dom Pedro was actually considered a progressive. Dom Pedro talked a lot of shit about slavery, but he was also very political. So he always said things that abolitionists always wanted to hear, but he would never act on it. He even invited Frederick Douglass to pay a visit to Brazil to discuss politics and to discuss abolition. You see, when the Confederacy lost the Civil War in 1865, Dom Pedro personally reached out to Confederate soldiers and paid for them and gave them an invitation to come to Brazil. The historical excuse that you will hear is that the Confederates were considered fantastic agricultural experts, and it would only make sense to welcome them since they were pro-slavery. 20,000 Confederate soldiers went to Brazil. So what do you think happens to 20,000 brand new immigrants that are pro-slavery ex-Confederates from America who now come into your land? Not to mention most of them also brought their slaves from America. You are celebrated and called Los Confederados. Now Brazil had expertise in growing cotton and had skin in the game now for textile exports. In 1888, Dom Pedro said, I'm out, I'm leaving just for a little bit. My Princess Isabella is going to take over. And she enacts the Golden Law, Lei Aurea. In his place, this abolishes slavery. And when Dom Pedro comes back in 1889, he realizes that he's not only pissed off all of the rich Brazilian land-owning elites, but also the Confederates that he personally paid for to come to Brazil. Not to mention the almost 400 years of slavery that Brazil profited off of. And on November 15th, 1889, Marshal Deodoro da Fonseca committed a coup and overthrew the Brazilian monarchy. Because when it comes to preserving your whiteness and your superiority, you will always have a January 6th.